Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 16 of This Korean Life. Do you need a lesson plan on the fly? Do you want to make next Friday's class more memorable? Check out ESL Hacker. The team is dedicated to making creative classroom content. ESL Hacker provides classroom materials to help you conduct more exciting, dynamic, and engaging classes. They provide worksheets for pop songs, mini documentaries. They have a true story section and also a monthly newspaper. Stop winging all of your classes and teaching boring old books day after day. Check out eslhacker.com and follow them on Instagram and Facebook at eslhacker. Today's podcast is also brought to you by Ox Smoke and Grill. No longer the hidden gem it once was. The Ulsan Ox Smoke and Grill restaurant is located in the Central Weave Zai building and offers amazing burgers, ribs, and the best smoked meat in town. Don't forget the apple coleslaw. This is not your regular barbecue. Last time I went, I had the platter, which comes with an assortment of meat. The ribs were unreal. The pulled pork, listen, I make pulled pork at home. This stuff is different. You'll know when you try it. It's so good. Also, it's a welcomed break from the standard Korean barbecue. They're open daily for lunch and dinner and also offer catering services for your next special event. Check them out at Ox Smoking Grill on Facebook or Instagram to see more of their mouth-watering creations. Today's episode features Conette Enslin. Conette came to Ulsan from South Africa with the dream of leading her own church. 6 short years later, she has started her own following called Journey, which services the Ulsan community. Conette shared her unique perspective on living in Korea as a South African pastor, being married to an American, giving birth in Korea, and she shed some light on why the South African teacher population in South Korea has seen an influx in the recent years. We had a great time chatting. I hope you all enjoy.
You are now tuned into This Korean Life with your hosts, Brian and Nate.
Hello and welcome back. We're here today with Conette Enslin. I want to jump right into it here. Conette, you are the head of
Journey English Church.
Journey English Church.
That's correct.
Growing up, I went to Catholic school my whole life, and one of our teachers, she said something to me one time that really kind of had a lasting effect, and I want to ask you about it. She told us one time, we always asked, I think she was a nun at one point and then changed into a teacher. We always asked, like, why were you a nun? What made you become a nun? She said, it was my calling. It was my calling. And she was just so convinced that she had to be a nun at one point in her life. So, not to throw a harder fastball at you right away, but what was your calling to the church? Was there one moment, or was it something you always felt?
I would agree with your nun teacher. It was my calling. No, I wouldn't say it was a lifelong pursuit. When I was young, I was very academic. So I was studying systems engineering, actually, when I left school.
Wow.
And then, just a very distinct and unavoidable calling. And so I changed my track and started studying theology. Just went to my mother's room and said, I'm going to study theology. And sort of all went from there.
Wow.
What was the reaction amongst your peers, family, etc., from changing directions so quickly?
My mom's first response was, I expected that.
Really?
Because I had recently started volunteering at a local church, just working with youth. And I had started studying psychology because I wanted to better deal with the youth. And so the psychology sort of let me into, and then needing to know more spiritually. And so, my family said no, they saw it coming and they were supportive.
So did you go to church growing up, or was that...
Yeah, I would say I was raised in a quasi-Christian, like we're born in South Africa, we're a Christian nation. We all go to school, we all go to church. But I became born again of my own volition when I was 17.
Oh, cool. How, growing up in South Africa, what do you think are some of the misconceptions that that even I probably still have. Again, living here, I've been introduced and have some South African friends who always squash my preconceptions when I ask, is it like this? Is it like that? Like, no, it's not like that. What do you think is the biggest misconception about maybe that Koreans have about South Africans?
First thing Koreans say to me is, "But you're not black." When I introduce myself, so that's a big misconception that everybody in South Africa is black, but we are 11 different languages, 11 official languages.
11 official languages?
Yeah, and so there's a lot of cultures represented, of which I am one, which is the Afrikaner culture, which is a white Dutch sort of background. And I think I've gotten questions like, oh, do you have electricity in your hut? Do you have a lion as a pet?
Yeah.
So they do assume we have wild animals roaming about and that our infrastructure is very poor.
Are these mostly from children or younger aged people, or even from the adult population?
Yeah, I would say the hut comment was from a teenager, and then the animal comments were from kids. But you're not black, I've gotten from adults, senior citizens, yeah.
And how do you deal with those? Do you take those as learning opportunities to explain and inform, or are you offended, or how? I've traveled a lot and I've heard all kinds of...
Depends if she's at her morning.
Do you live in an igloo and all kinds of stuff? And, they just slip off my back. I don't even notice them anymore. But how about for you?
I think South Africa is a beautiful culture, a country with so much to offer. So definitely an opportunity to share. No, we are so much more than that, or we have so much we can offer. So definitely not taking offense. And
it's, for me, it's the same when I'm teaching about kind of the world or other places, or trying to enlighten some Koreans on, just because you saw one story on the news doesn't mean all Muslims are like that, or all African countries are like that, look, I mean, they have bigger shopping malls than Korea. Mm-hmm. Oh, really? That's really? Yeah. Yeah, it's not just people living in huts in Africa, and it's not, every suicide bombers in the Muslim country. It's not. I lived there for a while. I also use those as opportunities to try and inform the Koreans to be a little bit more critical and to do a little research and open their minds a little bit, because they can be very narrow-minded at times, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's I don't know. That's something I'm still working on. I think it really depends on the day or the situation. Like, I don't know. I think I'd like to say over 90% of the time I'm okay, but when you walk in, if you're having a bad day, you get that wrong
90. That's very gracious.
What, for me or for you?
For you.
Come on, I'm not that.
I think as I tell my university students, I think traveling is one of the best educations you can buy. I still value the university, the process of going through university or college, but I think traveling, you can't get a more authentic experience. I don't mean the package tour, 3 days, 4 nights, but I've spent almost 4 years backpacking around the world, and I've lived in Africa for a while, and lots of time in Southeast Asia and over Europe, and I just think you can't buy those experiences. I mean, you have to go and do them and live them, and then you can pass that along to your kids, your spouse, your friends, and maybe they become more interested to learn about other cultures and become more understanding.
I think the one reason that I try and curb the anger, the like, what do you look, or why would you say that, or is because I think our kids growing up, if they see you react in a negative way, like, hey, look at the bald guy, what do you mean, and yell at the kid, or I think if we have bad reactions towards that, that's gonna seep into the next generation of kids, and that's not can't have that. We're gonna let's leave the anger with me. But anyway,
you said 11 official languages and many different cultures.
And the best part about having 11 official languages is that guy from Mandela's funeral. He can sign all 11 languages.
Well,
I
didn't know that.
Huh?
No. I remember a story on that guy, maybe, but
gone to left field. All right, keep going.
What is the current status there? I mean, is there a lot of, does everyone get along, or is it still very segregated, or how, what is it like these days?
So I've been out of the country for 6 years, so I would say my knowledge is probably not as extensive as it would have been.
Up to date, maybe.
Yeah, what I know is that there are a lot of racial issues, even still.
Right.
So there's we have, our country at the moment has the highest number of murders of farmers.
Really?
It is an endemic. It has been described as not an endemic, an epidemic. Been described as a civil war by some of the overseas reporters, but that is not being reported on because it happens, daily. So the farm murders are a huge deal for us, and then just there's a continuous racial issues, as well as a lot of xenophobia from other countries, visitors coming in. So that's a sad thing, and I love my country. I'm not a negative person, but that's also why I'm keeping my daughter here
right.
at this time, because even though I have high hopes and dreams that our country could be restored to its, something, the safety is the biggest concern. There's a lot of safety issues where highest rape number, I think second in the world now. I'm talking under correction though.
Yeah. And is that day-to-day safety concerns? Is weapons a major part of it, or is it mostly sexual attacks, or just everything?
I think it's the degree of violence associated with the attacks. Okay. So if you hijack somebody somewhere else, you'll stick your gun, you'll take their stuff, and you'll leave. But for us, they'll kill you. And so they'll rape you and they'll kill you to take your wallet. They'll come to your house, they'll rape and kill everybody to take your TV. So the degree of violence, or the degree of not being safe for women specifically, or farmers specifically, is a big social crisis.
So I tell a story to some of my kids about, I used to live in Ghana for a while, and then I traveled all over the West, and I remember having a gun on my head for my slippers, for my sandals, and I said, sure, take them. And they said, oh my God, that must be so scary. And I said, but it's not. It's, instead of making a big scene and fighting and arguing in public and, a scrap or a tussle, just give me it. Okay, here, go, done. And it's cut, clean, dry, and it's gone. But yeah, like you say, if they're doing that for a TV or for that level is crazy.
Is that everywhere? Is there certain area? What's the Johannesburg? Is a scary. That's a scary city. Okay.
Yeah. So I grew up there my whole life. So the crime is mostly located to the urban areas. So if you live in a small town on the coast, 50% safer, I would say. Okay. But the main cities are the big hotspots.
So what about? I'm just curious about tourism, because I know there's a lot of tourists that go to South Africa, or it's an arrival point for a lot of them at least. What is it like? I never hear stories in the news about tourism and dangerous experiences for tourism. Maybe I'm just not well read enough in South Africa. But what about tourism? I mean, it doesn't seem to affect the tourism industry, or does it?
I don't know the statistics.
Right.
I do know that I would highly always recommend people to go, just because it's so gorgeous. And I think people continue going, number one, because it offers something that they're not used to. So everybody thinks they're going to have the safari experience. Right. And number two, because it's just so cheap. So if you are traveling from anywhere else in the world, because our currency is weak, you can go to South Africa and live like a king for a month, or in a 5-star hotel, and it will cost you what, it will cost you to live here. Or so I think that's why people keep doing it, because it's the natural scenery is gorgeous, and it is really, really affordable.
There's actually one of the first South African friends I met. He was saying just within the country, if you drive 2 hours north, you can ski. You drive out east or wherever, and you can have a beach, and you go here and you're hiking in the mountains, which sounds like a pretty cool destination to be. That's awesome.
Would you say that government is more invested in tourism areas to protect that industry and the tourists and keep them safe so people keep coming, or is it just luck? Or
I'm not sure right now. The government the president has changed since I left.
Right.
I'm not up to date with the current president.
But in general, growing up or over the years, I mean, if people said Africa for the longest time, all I thought of was South Africa, until I went there and lived in West Africa for quite a while. But still, when people say Africa, you think South Africa all the time. It's immediate. Really? Yeah. Jungle, safari, South Africa.
Yeah, I think
When you hear Africa, you think South Africa?
I think in general, I think that's a normal. Even I think before I came to Korea, when you said Asia, it was China or Japan. No one thought of South Korea.
Man, I got worried.
It wasn't on the map when
I hear Africa, I get like world vision images.
But what country do you think of?
The poorest nation in the world. Like whatever, wherever they show on World Vision. Ethiopia, yeah.
Sure, but that's what I mean. People don't recollect. No one thinks Mozambique or Congo, or they just think automatically of either what's in the news for the war or. Yeah. I just think South Africa has been in the mainstream media for so long that I think that's a lot of people's first country they think of if someone said Africa, South Africa.
I think it for a long time it was the forerunner as far as development went. Yeah. And also number one, tourism, number two, sports. So our sports, our rugby, stuff like that is very well known.
Blade Runner there.
And I think it's more adaptable or associated with Western societies or cultures. Having the rest of Africa is predominantly black, so it, like you say, if it's a Dutch colony or Dutch past, then I think that's a lot easier to adapt to for someone who's going, where am I going to go? I mean, I was in Ghana. I was based in Ghana, and it was English and Christian, so that was a lot easier for me than thinking. I mean, after when I was through Mali, Burkina, and Niger and stuff. Wow, that would have been a lot different place to live full time, meaning that they don't speak English and they're Muslim countries, very, very different than being in a Christian Ghana, surrounded by the rest of French colonized West Africa. So I think a lot of people might be able to associate more with South Africa than some of the other ones.
So what made you pull the trigger on coming over to? And you came 6 years ago. That's probably around
2013 I came.
Nuclear threat time. Was that?
Yep.
That was an interesting time to come. What made you decide to hop on over?
I would say you're a nun teacher again. It was the call of God.
Yeah.
I had been working for the same church about 7 years in South Africa, and just looking for a change. I had hit a roof because I was female, I think, and some other elements. So thinking about changing to another church, not another country at all. South Korea, as you said, never even thought about it. In South Africa, we assume Asians are Chinese, stereotypically. But a friend of mine had come here to teach, met another friend, my husband, George, and said that the church at the moment had no pastor. There was a small English congregation in existence at Ximen Church, the Korean church. Yep. And they, at that stage, had not had a pastor for 2 years. So 3 weeks later, I was here, sold my house, my car, my furniture.
In 3 weeks, wow.
Yep, and came.
So how old were you when you came to Korea?
2013, 33.
And what was the general consensus at home amongst, again, your peers, your family and friends? Wow, huh? Korea? Why? What? Or
that was utter shock.
Yeah.
My friends and family were completely shocked. They did not understand. My mother was extremely concerned because we only see elements of stuff on the news, and it's very blown.
Well, it's the same for us looking at South Africa,
right? It's very blown out of proportion. She thought I was gonna get bombed, or I said my chances are way greater to get raped than to get bombed. So yeah, quite shocked, but
that's even when I came in 2004, and even when I came, and it was Japan, China for the Olympics, for sports, for anything. That's what we knew. That was before Hyundai, before Samsung became wildly popular, and K-pop and the Hallyu wave. But I remember them thinking, don't you want to go teach in Europe or somewhere safer? Or because same thing, you hear bits and clips of which was then Kim Jong-il. And now Kim Jong-un, but yeah, it was again that kind of apprehension. I was like, I don't care. I don't know anything about it. To me, it's the same. Japan, China. I don't know. I'm just going to go and see what it's like. If I don't like it, I'll leave. And here I am, many years later with a wife and kids. So,
so you came, like, you were elected the pastor of this church before you came, or did you come here and you have to apply, or is it an application?
No, because the church was made up of foreigners, but under the covering of the Korean church, which is a Ximen church in Ulsan. So I came and I started just volunteering. So in order to volunteer, I taught. So at that stage, I taught at a Hagwon. So,
English.
Yeah. So that gave me a visa to be legal.
Oh, okay,
right?
okay.
So
The church or the Hagwon?
my visa
Yeah.
was through the Hagwon.
Oh, okay.
The church could not extend me a visa.
So the church recommended if you want to stay and volunteer, get a job teaching, and then you can here. Then maybe we can transition after.
Yeah, so I and also because there was just no infrastructure and finances, the church had been floating for 2 years.
Right.
Pastor Kevin told you before that they had a Pastor Bill from the States, and he had left. So there was 2 years where they had nobody, sort of dwindled down. So I volunteered maybe a year, 7 months, and then I transferred full time to the Korean church's staff.
Yeah.
And what did the volunteering entail?
I did everything the pastor does, but I wasn't paid for it. I had a full-time job
Internship.
as a teacher. So
But so was that mass once a week, or
so
is there also a youth group, or
yeah,
or is
yeah.
it?
So we have Sunday worship service. We have Bible studies 3 times or twice a week. At that stage, kids Bible study, middle school Bible study.
And that was all in English.
Yeah, everything is in English.
And who were the kids coming to that service mostly? Because there wasn't a lot of, now there's a lot of foreigners who are married to Koreans, but I mean, even a few years back, there wasn't that many. It's getting very, very common now. There's lots of women married to Korean men. But who were most of the children coming? Was that engineers' kids or?
No. This is all the because I was on staff for the Korean church, most of my classes were organized and attended by Korean members. So my worship service, so the Korean church has the Korean service, about 3,000 members, and then they have a Mongolian, a Vietnamese, and an English service as well. For each of those, they have a pastor. So I was the pastor assigned to the English worship. My week time activities, though, the classes were all for the kids of the Korean service who wanted to study in English, right? So the kids' Bible study was all the kids from there, and we have a reading class. It's all the kids, the moms from there. I teach at the library. It's the moms from there.
So did you feel that was more, we want to get free English through church, or was that more, because to me it would automatically seem, just like when I was single and I used to date, it seemed like every, you would have to talk to 10 girls to find one who didn't just want to use you for English. And did you feel that way? And do you feel like, but I want to be a real pastor. I don't want you guys just doing this for free English lessons. I want to really.
Well, I think it was George Bush that said, wasn't, I was going to quote him, did he say, the Bible was written in English and that's the language we should speak or something?
Oh my goodness.
They just want to study it in the way it was written, man.
No. For me, I think there's always two sides. There might be those who get what they can, and then for me, it's it's missions. So I have a missionary mindset. So everything I do is missions orientated. So if you are coming for English, but I share the love of Christ, my job is being done.
Right.
So for me, whatever the Korean church asked of me, even though my husband has a similar concern as you, for me, it felt like I'm doing God's work. So if I'm sharing love with those kids or those teenagers or whatever classes they wanted me to do, missional thinking.
Because we find it all the time that, like through We Hope, everybody wants us to come and teach English for free. But we want to work with other disadvantaged youth where it's more about love and friendship and relationship building and caring and being mentors. But everybody, can you guys come teach English? Well, we're not English teachers. We come from all kinds of different backgrounds. We're not just English teachers. We're multidimensional. So, but so many, orphanages or multicultural. Oh, but it's so hard for them to go to Hagwons. They don't have lots. Can we just teach English for free? But lots of us do that in our jobs. Some don't. Some are students or professors or engineers.
Those are the hardest. Those are the most difficult programs for us to run. Ironically, are to find volunteers to do that. And when we do them, we get complaints for that. Oh, he didn't do this or that. We never wanted to do it in the first place. I
think for me it was a mind shift. If you are a missionary in Africa, so I worked in South Africa, I worked in Mozambique. What do you have is poverty. So when you are a missionary, you give food and clothes and water and Bibles and paper in order to show the love of Christ. Here, I work in a community that do not need those things.
Right. There are a few rungs up on that.
So the only commodity I have that they want is English.
Right.
So for me, it was a mind shift. Okay, what can I give here? And English, they do take, some people do take advantage. They would invite you for coffee. George always says
exactly.
the same.
Lunch, drinks. You end up with lots of best friends.
Yeah, because it's cheaper than paying for tutoring. But at the same time, this is the only arrow I have in my quiver here to share the love of Christ. So if it takes me sharing English, then let's do it. It's the same for our worship service. I mean, we have people coming to our worship service just to listen to English. They're not Christian, they're not saved, they're Buddhist, they're whatever, but they sit and they listen, and then afterwards we chat, and we always have social events. They come to everything because it's English.
Yeah. There's one of my wife's friends who lives in the building here. She belongs to another local church. And she says there's lots of kids who they kind of do one-to-one, not mentoring, but kind of, maybe I guess it would be mentoring. If kids have a problem, they have someone to go and talk to. Or you guys do that as well?
Well, I'm a registered therapist, so I do a lot of therapy here, but that's mostly for foreign members or foreigners, because there are very limited psychological opportunities for English speakers here.
Absolutely.
You cannot see a therapist here.
Yeah.
So I ended up just becoming the go-to. Because back home I had a center for maybe 7 years, a therapy center.
Nice.
But here people just see me on Facebook or online, but it's not church members. It's just anybody in the foreign community.
What would you say is the biggest problem, or the biggest the thing that people struggle with most?
I cannot necessarily answer that without breaking confidence. But let me say a general overall covering, I would say, is things related to loneliness causing depression. There's no support system here. There's no family system here. Yeah. So people are lonely and therefore depressed. Yeah.
Okay, that's it. I expected that or overstressed. That was one of and that is, I mean, we talked to Jeshurun before, and he was saying that's the reason he goes. He feels really safe and warm, and it's a very welcoming community in the church, which is good.
I used to work at UNIST, and I know there's a lot of professors at UNIST and 2 students at UNIST who go to church, and I didn't know when I got hired there, and I kind of slowly learned afterwards why it was. But what is of the foreign population that you have attending your service, are the majority of them young students and maybe foreign workers, or what's the main population of foreigners that attend service?
I would say a third of our members are UNIST or University of Ulsan students, the largest contingency being UNIST. And then a third, maybe about a third would be English teachers. And then a third, either Korean or other workers here, engineers or related to the engineering industry, things like that, or local Koreans.
Cool.
So one of my questions, I don't know if it was for Kevin or Jeshurun, was something along the lines of, in Canada, everybody goes to their church, and we're Pentecostal, we're Presbyterian, we're Methodist, we're Lutheran. But when you come to places like this, there's not those options. And I want to go to church, I want an English service, there's only one option. It's yours. So I would go. But what is it like when they come? How do you receive? I mean, do you try and learn about them and their background? This guy came from a Catholic church, so he might think a little different, or who cares? Just you're all here, that's what's important, and let's be people of God or whatever.
Yeah, that is a unique challenge. My thesis on expatriate diaspora multicultural ministry. because we have no options. When I started, there were 5 English churches in Ulsan.
Really?
Yeah, so we had one at the foreigner compound down in Donggu.
Right, okay,
we had Zeno's in Midtown. Right now we have 2 that I am aware of, which is mine, and then Pastor Shin, who is at the Presbyterian Church in Songnam-dong, also started his own church recently, which is City Center Church. So he's Korean but fluent in English. He caters very beautifully to the Filipino community.
Okay.
So mostly Filipino workers and wives of Korean members. A very lovely ministry. Our church is super, super mixed. As I said, Catholics, Presbyterian, you name it. So we present ourselves as non-denominational. We do not focus on my specific theological background or my denomination. I don't push any specific denomination. We have in common that we believe in Christ, we believe in God, and we believe in the Word of God, the Bible as it is, and we welcome anybody who's willing.
When it comes to Mary, we got a little, we draw the line. Draw the line in the sand. Yeah.
We have 3 Catholic members because they feel welcome. They've been there forever. They feel loved. They're our personal friends, and the opportunity for English Mass is limited.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I always think it's a unique dynamic that how do you make everybody, and that's when I ask and all the UNIS kids, they always tell me they go to church, and I think, how do you guys find the church so fast? And then, I'm good friends with the Ghanaians. I used to live in Ghana, and so I got along with them right away. And then as soon as they get here, boom, I'm playing the drums, I'm singing, and they're so involved. And I think, that's awesome, but what's the chance that you move to Ulsan, South Korea, there's one place you can go to church and you fit in so well? Mm-hmm. And it was just amazing to me that so many of them can be so involved and have such a good time. And I mean, those guys are amazing playing the instruments and with George as well. I just think it's not a miracle, but I mean, it's incredible that of all the places in the world, boom, Ulsan, the countryside, South Korea, and these guys have such a fantastic place. It's great.
That's awesome. Or you mentioned George has come up a few times here. You are married. You came here. You were telling me. I don't know if Nate knows. Why don't you tell him how you met your husband?
Well, it must be through the friend, she said.
Yeah, well,
she said her friend told her to come here because she met this guy named George.
It is a lovely little story.
Yeah.
I am married to Mr. George Leva, my husband. He was here before I came. I think he's been in Korea maybe 7.5 years. The friend of mine who introduced me to this job met George at church, and so he asked George to come pick me up when I arrived in Ulsan because George had a car. So George was the first person I met on Korean soil.
Showed up with a ring.
And it all happened from there. And awesome. So George has been here a long time.
What was he driving?
Same thing.
Was it a limousine or?
Same thing he's driving now, which is actually she's old. She's called Peggy, our car. Yeah, so we met here and we got to know each other, dated 3 years, and then got married and had our daughter. And
very nice, very nice. Tell or again, we were mentioning before, but tell us about about your wedding ceremony here. This was just the legal. Or no, you had a party here, correct? Mm-hmm. For friends? Mm-hmm. You signed the papers in America, and what about South Africa?
So George is a U.S. citizen. I'm South African, so we did our legal ceremony in the States about a month before our actual wedding, which was in South Africa, which was our religious or our actual service. And then we had a small one here as well because we have such a large group of friends and the church members. So we did a Korean traditional little thing.
Why did you decide to sign in the States? I'm totally curious. I have no idea what the benefits are.
I think George would like for me to have one day be able to live in the States and also for our kids to be U.S. citizens. I have no particular preference or passion to have to want to live there. But I think it might open doors for my daughter.
Absolutely.
To have that.
Cool. Very nice. Very nice.
What did you think of I mean, I married a Korean, he married a Korean, so we were very aware and some of our friends have gotten married, but being 2 foreigners doing the Korean style thing, how how was that? Because it was funny for me.
Oh, it wasn't just a party. You did the full Mickey Mouse hat.
It was funny for me, and my family that came. I mean, it was hilarious. But at least half of my family was Korean, and this was normal for them. And this was well, it might not have been normal. We had a traditional one, and they carried us in on these platforms. And
Oh my!
We let chickens go in the middle, and the ladies had to fight for them, and so maybe it wasn't normal.
Start again a carrying Nate in. We needed six guys in a tow motor. I blew out 2 discs.
But so what was it like being 2 foreigners doing a completely foreign style wedding?
No. We wore the outfits and we ate the food, but the service was just a Christian normal wedding service.
Yeah.
We did in English. We asked one of the Korean pastors who could speak English. So I think the Korean elements were mostly decorative, as far as the outfits and the food went.
Right.
And then because half of our friends are Korean,
right.
So, and small little differences, they were all looking for me to take pictures of me, and I had to sit on a chair, and and I had already taken the dress off, but they no, every person at the wedding wanted to have a picture with me sitting in the dress before the service, where in my culture nobody sees the bride before the service. So everybody was trying to find me, and I was hiding. So that was small little differences like that.
Wonderful. You got married. Did you have your daughter here?
Yeah.
You did?
Before that, what is it like being, unique? You meet abroad, that's cool, you get married, but what is it like learning each other's customs and cultures and holidays? And America is a very proud nation. They have everything is very extravagant and big and I just think of Thanksgiving parades and everything is so, and we're the little cousin to the north, but everything in the States, you just know when you get there, this is America. It feels different. And everything, you got to pump your chest up to walk around. And so what is it? And and for George as well, learning the South African, because what was it like learning each other's customs and cultures and stuff?
This is why we dated for 3 years, because my husband is very American, proudly American, and he has a lot of the character that you said. And I, as a South African, and just also my personality is a lot more, but his family are beautiful, wonderful people, and we fit. I think we did have a misconception when we think about East and West marrying. We expect a lot of cultural differences, and we expect a lot of challenges related to that. But as 2 Westerners marrying, we thought the differences would be small, but it is not. There are lots of even familial aspects. So we both celebrate Christmas, but very differently.
Sure.
We both do birthdays, but my first birthday is where's my present? No, we do it at night. We go have a fancy dinner. Oh, but I expected a present in the morning.
Smashes your face in a cake.
So we took our time getting to know each other, and also then living in Korea is like a fishbowl. We're in a bubble. We don't have the outside influences of family, so we still have to work through that when we eventually get to that. But right now, it's just the 2 of us in this little space with no family, no support.
So do you think that's easier in some ways or more challenging in some ways?
Yeah, definitely pros and cons. We do not have to deal with in-laws and deal with things like that. But we have no support. We have no outside influence. We cannot go and talk to our mothers, or my daughter can never be babysat. We're never alone. Small things that have benefits. And
sure.
Do you ever just make things up it's birthday in South Africa, you got to massage my feet for 30 minutes in the morning?
I've never done that, but you've given me a great idea. Great idea you've given me.
After you've been married for 4 years, the traditions change.
On the 4th year of marriage, my husband gave
So
me.
what was it like having a child in Korea? My personal experience, and most of the guys I know, it's very different. There's a lot of compromises that have to be made, and we are dealing with Korean families and their value system, so it can be challenging. But is it? I'm wondering if it's easier for 2 foreigners. I'm familiar with Roy and Emily's story. Is it? Do you think maybe it was easier for you because you don't have to worry about Korean culture and everything else, or do you get a lot of that when you go to the hospital still, or do they say, they're both not Korean, so we'll just do what they say, or you have to still do what they think, or what was it like having a child here and going through that process?
I think because of our personality differences, so I
You and the birthing nurse? Or?
no, me and my husband.
Oh, okay.
So I tend to want to submit to cultural whatever is prescribed, because I feel like I'm here, I'll do this. I am in Rome, I do as Romans do. My husband is, I am American, I'm a foreigner, I shall do as an American does. So,
but there's also a line to the Romans. Also, I mean,
so we are a great balance, because I can be pushed over and my husband will stand firm.
Okay.
And so as far as hospital things goes, we had our baby at Ulsan University Hospital because I was I'm not supposed to be able to have kids. I was medically told I couldn't. So my baby was a miracle, but it had lots of difficulties. But being in that hospital, I think, had benefits because they are very westernized, and the doctors and everybody spoke fluent English.
Or the best around here.
Yeah, and we could negotiate. So like usually they don't tell you the sex, but she said she would because we're both foreigners. And all the things that we had, we could negotiate. So, and my husband was very firm, and so I was willing to eat the miyakguk because I don't mind miyakguk.
Right.
My husband would want Western food. So
Bring her a hamburger.
and he was a real blessing to me in just keeping the balance.
Yeah. Good.
So it sounds like a pretty positive experience.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because in the groups that we're part of and stuff, there's so many. I think that we come with very stubborn and strong cultures from our mothers and sisters and aunts, and we expect one thing, but we have to remember we're in Korea and it's different, and sometimes we also have to give way to their ways. But we hear so many horror stories and crazy stories that I think the same. We want to stand firm and protect our wives, and sometimes we think that maybe they're afraid to speak up or to challenge the doctors because they're so submissive to higher powers, authority, whoever. And the one that comes to mind for me is the C-section, that they just plant that seed early. The head's big, the head's really big. And it sounds like from the second or third month that they're already gearing you up for C-sections. And they have one of the highest rates, I believe, in the world of C-sections here, which never used to happen 20 years ago. So, and I think there's a lot less education on being pregnant, going through the pregnancy, birthing, and they don't have, a lot of them just learn from their mother or what their mother tells them, and it's not a lot of material for them. My wife's grandmother raised her, not her mother, and my mother didn't offer a lot of advice or support. And I'm from a huge family. My mom's got 5 kids, Nona's got 10, and my sister's a nurse, and I think I'm pretty involved in that, and I wanted to be involved, but they kind of say, hey, Korean husbands aren't involved. You don't have to be here. And they asked me to leave the room, and I was like, no, I'll stay here, thanks. So it was a very, very different experience, but I'm glad to hear you guys had such a positive one.
Being foreign parents in Korea, is there anything you wish, or what do you feel like you're missing? You said you can't get a babysitter, or difficult to get a babysitter. What do you feel that you're not getting here that you could get at home?
I think because we are too
Biltong.
Oh, don't even say that word. I am now able to make my own, so I have.
Well, that's just cured meat, correct?
Yeah, it's like jerky, but way better.
We gotta talk.
We'll talk jerky.
Yeah.
I think my daughter, some negative things, because we are both foreigners. We don't have access to any of the government things that are. So we pay for daycare. We pay full fees. It's quite expensive. So if we were, one of us were Korean, that would be different.
Right.
And then just the family aspect of it. She has no family here.
Aunts, uncles, cousins.
Grandma, grandpa. I really miss that for her and wish that for her. She's very blessed that she has a surrogate family because of church. Right. So she has a lot of people, but we're expats, so everybody comes and goes. That's the culture of our church, and we build friendships and they leave. Yeah. And so she's constantly also saying goodbye to aunties or uncles.
See, that's Roy had a very very positive outlook on that. Like, my daughter has an Indonesian uncle and a and an aunt from the United States and Canadian uncles, and I think that's kind of cool or very unique.
I think that builds them up, the character for what they will face in the future. I mean, when people think about moving back to Canada, and I say, I kind of like it here, and we talked a little bit earlier about the bullying or discriminating. It doesn't mean moving home that you're free from all of that or that you're safe from all that. It's the biggest problem going on right now is the bullying and the suicides and stuff.
When you think about going home, I think we do romanticize like, oh, it's going to be just like my childhood, but it's completely
very different.
Right? Absolutely. But that is probably hard. I mean, even navigating the Korean systems to register your child, or how do you guys do that? Is it just you get friends from church? It must be a nightmare.
I have a Korean secretary, I would say,
nice.
Ms. Youngin, and she just does everything or helps us negotiate documentation, things like that. And so.
It's not so easy, is it?
Recently, in the last, I don't know, I would say maybe about 5 years, maybe a little more, there's been a huge influx of South Africans coming. One, what do you think is the driving force behind that, and what are these people facing at home? Like, if I went back to Canada right now, even with a master's, I don't know what kind of job I would get. I think I'm qualified for a lot, but whether they would hire me or not is a different story. And I'm sure technologically there's a lot of young people who are much more advanced than I am with the way all the tech stuff works these days. So why do you think there's such an influx, if you have any opinions or ideas? And what might be the situation of these people back home? Can they get a good job? Can they have a reasonable life, or not really?
Unfortunately, our country has a very high unemployment rate. So for the general populace, it's 29%.
Wow.
But for the age group 18 to 24, it's 55% unemployment rate. And for graduates, it's 32. Well, that's the last time I checked. So even though you graduate with a degree, you cannot find a job.
You're not easy.
Sounds like here.
And then number 2 is, if you do find a job, the pay scale. I mean, I studied for 9 years, but what I was paid, I couldn't buy my groceries. You know, my mother had to take care of me, even though I was old and had degrees. So I think that's another reason. And number 3, a Korean teacher's salary, if you put it into South African money, it is a very good salary. Okay. Plus, they get their apartment, they get food at school, whatever food it's so the package is extremely attractive for a South African. Okay. And Korea is just so safe.
But what was the difference? Like when I came, it was mostly Canadians, Aussies, and Kiwis, and I don't know where they've gone or what happened. I know that in Australia and New Zealand, the cost of living has gone way up. So and the salaries here have been stagnant for as long as I've been here. So maybe it's not worth it anymore. But that makes me surprised there's still more Brits coming over, because I mean the won compared to the pound, although it's much better now than it was 10 years ago. It was only half. Now it's probably 2/3. But like, why wouldn't the South Africans have come over before? Was it just lack of, I mean, nobody went and came back and told everyone, hey, it's really good, come over. Is it word of mouth? Or, because I know that's what it was in Canada. Some guys went to Japan, and then it was just boom, boom, boom. Everybody started going overseas to teach because that was the thing to do. Kind of similar, or?
Yeah, we didn't know. So when my friend came here 6 years ago, I had never heard of that being able to happen, or that you can go teach, or that's an option.
Go teach with any degree. Not a teaching degree, any degree. Like an arts degree. Go to Korea.
Any degree. And I mean, and there's a lot of agencies that have popped up in South Africa.
That's what I was wondering, if that was one driving force.
And they were teachers here before, and they saw the need, and so they go and they create the agency because it's a good income. And so all of a sudden it's the cool thing. Yeah, to do. So people.
But it's also very financially rewarding.
Oh yeah, and
by the sounds of it. Because in Canada now, I mean, it's just not, the salaries here have been stagnant for so long. The cost of living was half the price of what it is now. And the won was much stronger than the dollar. So if we sent money home, we'd be making 20%, 25% more. But now there's been times when the Canadian dollar has been stronger than the won. And now the cost of living is so much more, and the salaries are still the same. So I wonder when I meet new Canadians coming and they think, wow, it's great here, it's so good. I think, you should have been here 10 years ago. It was incredible. Because I just think, how can young people make it now? I mean, we've cut out our niche and we know what to do and how to make money. But somebody coming first time making $2,000 a month is not a lot of money to send home to pay off your student loans.
They don't have to pay rent. They get a flight.
In South African rand,
so that's what it
is a lot of money.
Yeah. And that's what they tell me, though. You know, you're forgetting that we get free housing. We get our airfare paid for. Lunches are at school. I don't eat breakfast. So I only eat once soju's still $1 a bottle. You can't drink like that at home. You can't party like that at home. So it's still a very attractive place for a lot of people.
And if some of us are here to pay debt, and some of us I see my congregation, the young people who come from South Africa, to travel. So for them, they teach to travel. So what they earn here, and during Chuseok or Solal, they go to other countries.
Enjoy,
So for them, that's still...
It's a life experience.
Is it common for South Africans to travel? I mean, just I would say
in South Africa, it's impossible because it's so expensive for us. So for us as South Africans growing up, we rarely get the opportunity to travel unless your family is extremely well off. Because to buy an airplane ticket from South Africa, but so for us to come here and we're able to jump on a plane and just go to any of these countries, it's first time experience for most of us. Yeah.
By the way, found tickets to Boracay, $85. I gotta leave in November. You gotta go in November.
But that's part of, I mean, being in Canada. I mean, it doesn't matter which way we go, we're still in Canada, or we get to America, and in lots of ways, it's the same. So I always thought, man, being in Europe,
except everyone's got their chest puffed out.
You guys could
American.
You guys could go an hour in any direction, go through 2-3 countries. It must be cool, but they're also similar. I mean, if you were in Canada and you went from East Coast to West Coast, you'd notice some big differences also. But yeah, I just think being here and with the AirAsia and those, $50-$100, you can go to so many places, and especially if you get down in Southeast Asia. Wow, you can take those hopper planes anywhere, $50, and just go enjoy so many places. It's so affordable. And in Canada, it's just not like that, man. It costs a fortune to go anywhere, and you're still in Canada.
Well, even like you said, just flying. I just told them to fly to Philippines. It's a 3-hour flight. It was $85. To fly 3 hours west in Canada is $350-$400.
I think it's the same.
Crazy.
The motivation for our church as well, because we can do things from Korea that we can not do. So I have a missional heart, and there's a lot of work to be done in other Asian countries.
Right.
And I can do them from here. So our church has a project called the Book Journey, and we plant reading rooms in grassroots churches in other Asian countries, right? So in Korea, kids have thousands of books and they don't even read them, and they have the opportunity. So the other Asian countries are very high. I mean, Philippines is like 100% literature level, but they don't have the access.
Right.
So from a Korean springboard, we can do so much work that we could not do from South Africa.
Absolutely.
So we can plant those churches or those reading rooms or those whatever from here that I could never do from South Africa if I had to fly there.
No.
So do you envision in the future going to these countries and starting or being hands-on in the field in starting these projects or implementing these projects? Or will you always just think you'll be based from here and supporting other people to do those things?
Our church is part of an international network of churches called Ethnos, which is based in New York City. And so the network has churches everywhere, all over the world.
Sounds like a part of the Avengers, man.
And so with those networks, we are able to connect with pastors on home soil.
Cool.
So the vision is that from Korea, we're the Asian springboard for those countries who want to do the missions but don't know how or where the need is. Cool. So they can network with us, and we say, okay, we have a church in the Philippines or a church here, and they have this and this and this need. So
there's no shortage of books here.
And so,
but what about I was thinking, what about English books though?
That's our focus.
Right.
So we want to being literate saves lives.
Sure.
So if I can teach a kid to read, I can probably change his circumstances. So I love God, but I also love education. If each Korean student in the Korean church gave 10 of their books away, they wouldn't even feel it.
Right.
But I can have 1,000 books to put a library or a reading room in a grassroots church in another Asian country. Yeah. So if I have 1,000 books, I fill 3 walls. So I have a reading room.
Yeah.
And the local community, all the schools, all the kids in that church's feeding ground have a safe place to go. So it works both ways. The church are always looking to get people in. But the community don't necessarily go there. But if they have a reading room, it's a safe space for the kids, and the church gets to minister the love of God to the community. So that is our plan. Yeah.
Cool. And my experience from my time in West Africa was that they follow that stuff. If there's books, they go for the books. Mm-hmm. If there's free T-shirts this week they're Presbyterian. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Next week, the Methodist Church has loaves of bread. Hey, now I'm Methodist. Mm-hmm. And they'll change. But they get the opportunity, and if they feel something or they want to stay, then that's they're hooked and they can stay. And if they don't, they can go and in the meantime be empowered by learning how to read or English or whatever else. So I kind of like that philosophy. It's good. Where do you see the future, or do you envision staying in Korea a long time, or what do you see your role as the church? Do you envision growing and I don't know. What do you think, or what do you see for the church and for the future for you and your family? Korea long term, or?
We love Korea, and we're quite blessed and happy here. I think the only thing that has changed is having a child, and so my daughter changed my life, right?
Absolutely.
And so now we are thinking about when she becomes school-going age and having to go into the school system, that might change our plans. Foreign school or the international schools are extremely expensive. Yes. So they cater to engineers. So my husband and I cannot afford BIFs. Korean mainstream school, my daughter is not Korean. So even though by that she will be Korean fluent because she goes to Korean daycare, putting her into the mainstream school is concerning for me just because of the pressure and the Korean style of schooling.
And even being able to help with homework or communicate with teachers and parent-teacher, everything, sure.
Everything is complicated. So when she reaches school-going age, we would have to reconsider our options. My husband can homeschool her. I mean, he's equipped, but I would love for my daughter to go to school. Yeah. I believe in the principles of going to school. Right. So right now we are here. Right now God hasn't told us to leave. Right now God has given us a great vision for our...
It's time to go.
But when she gets to 6 or 7, we might have to reconsider.
And what do you think would be options? The States only, or another third party country, or?
Yeah, George loves South Africa. I am scared to put her there. And also just for us to make a life there. My husband's a teacher. I'm a pastor. The options. The States, though neither of us are particularly excited about going, that's where family is. And so I really want my daughter to have a family structure. Yeah. And we have lots of cousins. And so that might be the final force. But I would say any country that God sends me, I would go.
Cool. I don't know. That's something that pulls, I think, both of us towards home too. Is the family, or the way we envision dinner at aunt's house or cottage life or stuff like that. And when you go home for summer, you get the full. You're home. Everyone wants to get together, and you get that full experience of, family dinners or gatherings, or.
But it's for me. That's not. It's not reality. I go home. My 5 brothers and sisters live all over the country, and it's a huge country. It's not Korea where you drive 4 hours and you're anywhere. We wouldn't see each other in Canada anyways, because we're spread out across the country. So it's not any different than me living here and going home every 2 years or 3 years and spending a month of quality time. Than living 4 hours away but never going because to fly 4 people or to drive is too expensive. So for me, the reality is that even if I live in Canada, it doesn't guarantee family dinners and whatever else. My brother's in Calgary. There's no family. And I mean, he sees a couple of our cousins or whatever once in a while, but he's not in that much different of a situation than you are, because the rest of our family's all east of there. So it would really depend on where I move to, and where my mom and dad are, and my sister. The winters are minus 40, and
Oh my goodness.
I got zero interest in living in Winnipeg. So even going home, as much as I want my kids to be around grandma and grandpa, I wouldn't probably see them that much anyways. So there's definitely some compromises and things that have to be made. But I don't know about your situation in America, if all George's families all together in one state, or
Same block.
What's that? Nice.
Well, his parents, his sister, and his other sister all live in the same suburb.
Wow.
So that
okay.
has been a real blessing. Their kids are all in the same school.
Wow.
So yeah, when I go there, it does feel like utopia.
Yeah.
And I grew up with my cousins in my school, and yeah, it was fun.
I see how my niece is now with my cousin's kids, and they're all pretty tight, and I kind of wish my kids were over there too. That's so.
But we just went back for a month. I think my daughters have made fabulous memories. They can't wait to go back again. But I also think if you're there all the time, you take it for granted. And it's the old quality over quantity. That I remember being with my brothers and sisters every day, and we took 5 different cars to university. We said hello in the morning, said goodnight at night, because we all went to school, we all worked our jobs, and we all came home and did our thing. But now that I don't see them all the time, when we go home, we really have good times together, and we have a lot of quality time. And I don't go home for a week or 10 days. I try and go for as long as I can, and to see all of my siblings and everybody, and to have that time together. But man, I look back now and reflect, wow, we all had 2 or 3 part-time jobs in university, and it was just go come, until there was a long weekend or a holiday or a festival, and then you'd spend time together. But otherwise, it was 7 people all eating at different times. And I don't mean when we were young, but once we hit adolescence and we were working part-time jobs. He goes to hockey, she goes to dance, he goes to work, he's got night classes. It was...
So it's just that. It's funny too that we look at Korea, and I always poke fun at them that their kids are so involved and busy, and got to go to Math Hagwon or this academy, that academy. But I think it's the same at home. It's just maybe in a different capacity. Maybe they're in sports,
recreation,
or they're doing something else. But
the kids aren't any less busy, no. They are very busy.
If you move to the States, what do you think you're going to miss most about Korea?
The internet.
Yeah.
George's family all live in Arizona, and which is the weather also concerns me, because I'm not good with heat, and I'm used to green.
It's a dry heat.
South Africa is very
dry
green.
140.
But yeah, the fast internet is we're spoiled here.
No doubt, absolutely.
I always laugh going home. It's like a time warp. And I think, wow, I thought we were an advanced nation, but man, it's so different going home. And just the way life works here with the connectivity is incredible. How everything is just interconnected. It's crazy, and very convenient at the same time. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, with that influx we talked about of South Africans here, is there a reciprocal part of South Africa that's gaining or becoming more knowledgeable of Korea and Northeast Asian culture, practices, K-pop, and this kind of stuff? Or is it just go, teach, make the money, come home? Or is there an influx of Korean tourists to South Africa now that more people are sharing cultures? Or
As far as the tourism goes, in my experience, Korean people really they tell me, a safari. But they're very scared because of the crime. So I have had, outreaches planned, and they were canceled because the Korean populace were afraid of what they saw in the news. So I don't think it has necessarily positively affected tourism. As far as the people coming here, the friends that have gone back, I have some friends who love K-pop since being here. I've not seen it take off in South Africa. She knows, but nobody else knows.
Yeah, okay.
Some of my friends or people who've been here, they cannot find a job, they keep coming back because there's no opportunity there. But as far as them taking the culture there, not so much that I'm aware of. If I go and we go on vacation, we went in April for a month, there's I would say ignorance, maybe just about South Korea. It's not, we all group it Asia as stereotypically Chinese.
Yeah, same at home.
So I haven't seen the food or I know of one Korean restaurant in Joburg, but apparently there are more, but I'm just not aware. Yeah.
Cool.
But now it's same as home, but not really. I mean, these times going home, I mean, Hyundai has been one of the number one car sellers in Canada for 10 or 12 years now. And I mean, people are aware now of the Korean short track skaters and Kim Yuna figure skating, and K-pop bands are touring all over Canada and America now. So it's changed lots. When I came to Korea, nobody knew. There was nothing really Korean. But now, you know, all my friends are throwing out iPhones and picking up Galaxy S10s. So I think in that way,
it's a better phone.
In that way, I fully agree. But I think that the culture has made people curious and interested. And the Korean restaurants at home, they're everywhere now. Everywhere. And kimchi's a superfood. And I got my buddies telling me they're going to try and make kimchi. And I go, are you serious? You were laughing about my kimchi consumption 5 years ago.
Oh, which Sharky?
Now you're...
Sharky told us in the last podcast that it grows hair back, man.
But anyways, I just think it's funny. Like the stuff that, you know, people used to laugh at me about is now becoming, even the miyeokguk. Seaweed soup, and my mom and my sisters, they go, seaweed soup. Now it's the number one regenerative postpartum food. And now it's, you know, all over Canada and the States now they're promoting it. So yeah, it's really funny to see how the perspectives have changed.
I haven't seen
over
that
the
ad
years.
campaign yet on Facebook. Hey, eat your seaweed. I don't know. What if you had one wish for your church for kind of maybe in 10 years, if you could wave the magic wand and make a wish for the church, where you hope to see it? I mean, if you went, where would you like to see it in 5 to 10 years?
I think the networking.
Yeah.
We used to, for a long time, I functioned in isolation. I think that's not healthy at all for most missionaries. So just being more network minded with churches across everywhere. And also, I think what I learned here is that the world is so small because of technology. So our church can function from anywhere. Right now, we have a need in where we are. We're meeting a need. The need in Ulsan, just for foreigners, especially just the family home, somewhere to go. We people are welcome and we hang out. But we thought small. We thought, okay, we're creating a little warm, fuzzy place. But God can use something small for something much larger. And we've realized now that we are the only English-speaking church in South Korea that has this network with other churches to try and be a springboard into the rest of Asia.
Yeah.
So even if I move, I can do that from anywhere. So even if I move, I would never cut ties with Korea. And I hope our ministry can continue through Korea. And if we put these things in places with our book journey to maintain that from wherever we are.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
I think just before we go, can you give us or give us a little plug on the church, the services and masses and whatever programs you guys run? And also maybe if anyone's looking to donate books for your next project. And you mentioned...
Do you ship books over to...
Yeah, we want to make it's a personal thing. So each child has to box and ship his books.
Oh, okay.
Because he's taking personal responsibility to enable a child in another country. So if a family or an organization donate, they put their name on it.
Nice.
And it's sort of like a sponsoring.
Cool.
I like it.
So, and you mentioned therapy. If someone out there is lonely or troubled and looking for help, where could they come, or what do you offer? How could they get in touch with you? And then we will make sure to put that information on the podcast and the website and everything else. Okay.
So our church services are Sundays at noon because everybody likes to sleep. And our church congregates in Daundong at the Daun Sagori. There's a big building with a coffee shop at the bottom called the Book Cafe. Oh, yeah. With a library on top. So we meet there Sundays at noon. There's a lot of activities or events. There's Bible studies on Sundays, once a week, women's Bible study, kids stuff. We do library meetings, reading classes for all voluntarily.
Do you have a website or a Facebook page or something people could find that information? Or?
Sure. On Facebook, it's Journey English Church, and the webpage is the same. If they want to contact us, they can contact us through Facebook or email. And then as far as, sorry, what was the second half of your question? Oh, therapy. That is as needed. People just contact me. I usually meet them in the coffee shop at the in the bottom floor called the Book Cafe. And my therapy work is something I do voluntarily on the side, and has a different set of principles. Therefore, if you come for therapy, it's not religious, it's not related to the church, it is confidential, and it has all the same rules and regulations if you went, for therapy elsewhere. But they're welcome to also text me through Facebook.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. We will make sure to get that on Facebook and social media and stuff. So if anyone out there listening wants to check it out, they can.
Journey. I just keep thinking of the band Journey. Don't stop believing. Anyways, Journey.
Don't stop believing.
Is that your? Is that your? That should be your new motto. But anyways, Conette, thank you very much for taking time out today. We enjoyed having you. Anyways, thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye bye.